So much more coming up on part two of America's Voice Live. Now, let's start this hour with the shooting at an LGBTQ club. I think it was actually called the Q Club in Colorado. A tragedy that took the lives of 5 people, injured several more. The shooter subdued within moments, where he did a lot more damage. And the media, as well as Democrats, the socialists, but let's face it, they're the same thing at this point, decided to use the tragedy, as they always do, to push their agenda, that Republicans are evil and homophobic and deadly. And that's why this shooting occurred in the first place. They also said that Republicans are evil and homophobic because we don't like our kids being exposed to drag queen story hour, for example, or teachers infecting our kids with ideas that they think they can spin the wheel and pick a gender. But an interesting thing happened last night when the alleged shooter's lawyer said his client is actually non-binary. And CNN had it happen to them in real time. They saw the report that came from Axios first. And here's what happened next. Watch.
Attorneys for the accused shooter, Anderson Lee Aldrich, say in new court filings tonight that the suspect now identifies as non-binary. In a footnote to a motion asserting legal privileges, the public defenders say, quote, Anderson Aldrich is non-binary. They use they, them pronouns, and for the purposes of all formal filings will be addressed as Mix Aldrich. So in other words, not Mr. or Ms. Joining me now, CNN political commentator Errol Lewis, also back with me, Al Franken and Joe Walsh. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, that's not anything that we had heard from his background. You know, people have been looking into his background. And I don't know if anybody here, are you guys lawyers? I mean, you know, I don't know if, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, that's what he's now saying.
It sounds like they're trying to prepare a defense against a hate crimes charge. That's the least of his problems, legally speaking, but it looks like they're trying to build some kind of sympathy or at least confusion on the question of whether or not this was purely motivated by hate.
I mean, that is what it sounds like. We'll wait to see.
Seems to me like CNN is desperately trying to find some way to explain the fact that the killer is non-binary by making wild assumptions based up by exactly no facts at all. In fact, it seems like that whole thing blew up in their face, the narrative gone. And again, we don't know the facts of this case yet. That's why you can't blame a whole group of people for a shooting when you know nothing about it. Here to discuss it in more detail is the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, Dr. John Lott. Doctor, good to see you. Now, the confusion on the set of CNN I found amusing. Well, how do we explain? Well, it looks like they're trying to get away from the hate crimes. Or maybe he's part of that community to begin with. Did that occur to anybody? Interesting case, to say the least.
You know, the notion that somehow they're doing this to avoid hate crimes just seems absurd to me. I mean, he's going to be facing 5 life sentences. He's going to be facing dozens of other felony charges that are there. Having a few more years added on to multiple life sentences just doesn't seem like a very serious thing for the lawyer to be engaging in. In any case, the lawyer, if he's saying something that's untrue, risks disbarment. But there's, you know, part of the media is doing what CNN's saying. Other parts of the media are pointing out that, well, the reason why he did the attack was because he had been taunted and bullied since he was 15, I guess, when he came out with this different types of gender issues that he had. The thing that doesn't make any sense to me is, let's say you accept that argument. Why would he go after a gay bar to go and do the attack? It seems, you know, that they're not worried about trying to make.
Yeah, if the premise is he was bullied for being part of the LGBTQ community, non-binary, or whatever the case may have been when he was 15, if being bullied by others, by straight people, I would assume, for being that way would be the assertion they're making. You wouldn't go shoot up the gay bar, would you? I mean, it's all very bizarre. What it means is, John, is that every time one of these things happens, these bobbleheads on CNN and MSNBC, they start making hypotheses and assumptions and claims and statements of fact when they know nothing about the backstory at all. And they've done it again.
Look, in the last week, we've had President Biden come out and try to argue for the assault weapons ban after attacks that involved just handguns. Uh, but, you know, what we have here is a situation where initially when it came out that it was an attack on a gay bar, conservatives were being attacked, as you mentioned earlier, so Paul instigating this. And now when it turns out that the guy is binary, the conservatives are still supposedly at fault for this. It's just, you know, here you have somebody has severe mental issues. Last year, he kidnapped his mom, threatened to kill her with bombs, had other weapons. The police were forced into a 4-hour standoff, but no charges were eventually filed against him. The prosecutors let him go, despite that he could have faced many felonies. And if he had gotten those felonies, he would have been banned from owning a gun. But they didn't even take away his gun that he was using to threaten his mom and others a year ago.
Yeah, it is remarkable that somebody that did that a year ago is even out on the streets, to me. And it makes me wonder, who was the prosecutor in that case? Is it one of these newfangled low bail, don't hurt their feelings prosecutors, so you set them free? Is that what we're dealing with?
It's basically it. And we've seen this type of thing happen time after time. You know, the Nicholas Cruz case in Florida with the Parkland shooting, the sheriff's office had apparently gone to his house there for calls 45 times. His mother had her teeth knocked out and put in the hospital, and yet they refused to do anything. You had situations at school where he had created many problems at school, but because of his race, they decided that it would be improper, you know, this pipeline to prison type argument. So they didn't want to go and do anything against him in the school either. We have many of these types of cases that have been occurring, and yet rather than going and trying to fix the law enforcement that we already have, Democrats want to go and have more laws that would primarily just disarm law-abiding citizens and not stop these attacks. Colorado has all the different types of gun control laws that Biden would like to have nationally, and yet.
And how's that working?
Didn't stop the attack, obviously.
Yeah, you know, what I think, John, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Republicans and Democrats agreed on some things. One of the things they agreed on was you held criminals accountable for criminal action. You didn't try to mitigate it and blame the rest of the world. You didn't say, well, he got bullied or he got picked on. We actually held criminals responsible for criminal activity. We didn't try to say, well, they're black or they're white or they're gay or they're straight. I think it's a bipartisan issue that still resonates today because I think people in America really are sick and tired of crime in all of its forms. I'll give you the last word.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, it seems to me in this case, this individual had really severe mental issues. But because he's binary, I suspect that the left is going to have a hard time going and classifying him as having those types of mental issues that are there.
Yeah.
But, you know, we're going to have to get back to the fact that if you want to deter crime, you're going to have to go and make it risky for criminals to go and commit crime. One of the things that bothered me in this case is I want to do something, but I want to make sure that the people in places like that gay bar would be able to go and defend themselves and not just with their fists or feet against
Well, I saw one of the
victims.
comment on one of the morning programs here today that he believes that gay bars and other places, at a minimum, should have numerous armed guards. So advocating for guns, that was on MSNBC. I saw the anchor's face turn pale white, their jaw dropped, and they quickly went to commercial because one of the victims of the shooting at the gay bar advocated guns being a solution to the problem. And there's it is. I got to leave it right there, John. Go ahead.
I wouldn't have armed guards. I would have the customers there. If you have somebody in uniform who's armed, they are like having a sign above them with a neon sign that says "Shoot me first." You have to make it so that the attackers don't know who it is that's going to be able to go and protect them. So otherwise,
well, that part's true. That part's true, and maybe you make them plainclothes because you can't have the patrons that are drinking alcohol in a bar having guns. You can't do that. I think we agree on that. No drinking and guns.
You have designated drivers, right? Not everybody who
That's a fair
goes
point.
there. So you have designated somebody who carries.
Well, it's worth, well, apparently those in the LGBTQ community are warming up to that idea. Dr. John Lott, greatly appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
As always.